You found us again. Welcome to the Smart Driving Cars podcast. This edition is sponsored by the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. For more information, head to motoetf.com. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alan Kornhauser. Good morning, Alan.
Hey, good morning, Fred.
Joining us, we're happy to welcome back Michael Senna, a consultant in the automotive and transportation fields and publisher of The Dispatcher. Great to see you, Michael.
Great to be back. Thank you, Fred. Hi, Alan.
Hi. Nice to have you.
In the latest Dispatcher, on top is the first part of a two-part series talking about why there is still a chance for the Western car makers to stay in the manufacturing game as opposed to becoming assemblers, as you put it, of battery electric vehicle components. Give us the overview, Michael.
Oh, well, the main question, the title is not so easy to pop a top hat on a BEV skateboard. Top hat
that needs some explanation.
It needs a little bit of explanation. Well, in automotive terms, top hat is the body that's placed on the vehicle. So the first part of the article is a little bit of an historical overview of, how we started with cars. There was a base, like there was a base for the horse-drawn carriages, and on top of that, you placed the body.
A top hat.
A top hat. Yeah. So if you grew up,
like
you grew up in the early days. Yeah, you grew up with Body by Fisher. Fisher was bought by General Motors, and before that, it had been a coach maker. And General Motors would initially farm their body building out to Fisher, and the car would come back with seats and the basic the outline of the car. And this was the way that most cars were built in the U.S. until the 50s, and in Europe it was maybe to the 30s and 40s. And after that, the cars moved from this frame base with a body on top to what's called a unibody, where the frame and the body are basically one, and that's the difference between a body on frame and a unibody is this difference. And most cars today, up to the point of Tesla coming back with frame on body on frame, have been unibody. So the purpose of the article is to establish why electric cars have moved to the concept of body on frame, and the frame, if you can think of, I don't know if you've ever seen a Volkswagen with the top hat off, and I use that as the example. My first two cars were VWs, and when you see one of these, the first thing I thought of when I saw this is it looked a lot of years ago, it looked like a skateboard. That term has now been taken by the electric car industry, and the concept that Tesla has based its design on, and then all of the electric cars are based on this concept of an electric skateboard. So if you look at how these cars are built, everything's in the skateboard, and the value, most of the value of a car that's built now for a battery electric vehicle is in that body. It's in the frame, because that's where the batteries are. That's where all of the everything is there, and then you put on top of this.
Too, right?
The motors are in the wheels. I mean, the electric motors are there as well. The drivetrain is there. Everything is there. Now, what's happened is that everybody and their grandmother has now decided that they can easily be into the electric car business, because all you need to do is develop a basic frame, put the batteries in, get the electric motors working, and then you can provide this to other car manufacturers who want to get into the business of making electric cars. And all you need is a body. That's the concept, and the values of these companies like NIO Byton and everybody else comes out of, we can provide this to anyone, and we can also build cars ourselves. So a Geely says, well, we're in the business of building electric cars. We've got a electric skateboard. You can put your body on it and you roll away and everything is fine. So you have these enormous valuations, market valuations of companies, a lot of them Chinese, many of them Chinese, based on the fact that anybody can be in the business, and you can put this really neat Lamborghini type, Ferrari type body on top of it, and you're good to go. So, you can sell a car for $1 million, and all you put into it was this basic body. This sort of conventional wisdom has continued, but people are now beginning to understand, and I give examples of what's happened with companies like Ford, for example, Hyundai, who were moving in this direction, saying, well, we'll just take the skateboard, we'll put our body on top of it, we'll do some of the electronics and everything. It'll look like a Hyundai, and it'll cost us almost nothing because they did all the work. The problem with that is that they also own all the value in this. But the real problem, and this is what the article is fundamentally about, is you can't just put a top hat on a skateboard and say, there's the car. Because there is so much more involved in the integration of everything that's being done now with drive-by-wire. These companies like NIO and Byton, they have no idea of what it takes to create a vehicle that a Bosch and a Continental, working together with BMW and Mercedes and the others, Delco and the old Delco, working with the car industry. They've spent years developing the integration of everything that's related to drive-by-wire, integrating that with the vehicle, integrating that inside of the unibody design, and making these cars safe, secure, workable, maintainable over a long period of time. And it's incredible how poor the automotive industry has been about promoting themselves as knowledgeable, experienced, having done what they needed to do to get cars to be as safe as they have been. And suddenly they started rushing around and investing in companies that really shouldn't be invested in, and taking in their products, which they really should never have been even doing. Now it looks like they finally gotten the idea, they got the message. No, that's not where we want to go. What we want to do is we want to work with what we have. We want to be able to build on what we've already created. We can make them electric. That's the least of the problems. The biggest problem is building a car that is safe, is drivable, is secure, can work with everything else that needs to be worked with, particularly everything that we're moving toward with more self-driving and driverless. You don't do that by putting a top hat on a skateboard and saying, we're finished. Everything else is just, icing on the cake. We'll put a couple of LiDARs on and some radar here, and, everything else will be fine. We just, that's how we deliver a car. That's not the way to deliver a car. So, there's a lot of detail in the article. It's long. I've decided that it needed to be, and as I said, it's the first part of a series. It's the first piece of what the car industry needs to be thinking about and doing. But the second piece, which comes in October in the next issue, is a continuation of this. It doesn't stop with just saying we're not going to build cars based on skateboards. We're going to build cars based on the technology and the knowledge that we've had over and put together all of these years to be able to deliver cars that people will drive and should be driving.
Describe for us. You're going to get into which companies will be best positioned to build future cars, but they've all pretty much, I can't think of one that hasn't announced that they're moving to all electric. It seems that they've, in the next decade or so.
Yeah. it's we have a very good friend together, Fred Dreyer, and Fred is terrific. I mean, since I made through Alan made contact with Fred, we've been communicating quite often, and we send each other material, and he sends me an awful lot of material about electrification and motor operation and operation of vehicles. We are of the same mind. Battery electric vehicles are not the best solution. They're, for many reasons, they're not the best solution for the future. However, for one reason or another, politicians, primarily politicians, and other people working around the politicians and strategists and climatologists have focused on this. In a sense, it's low-hanging fruit. We can make cars electric a lot easier than we can solve the climate problem. So let's focus on making cars electric, and everybody thinks we're doing a great job on the climate problem. There's nothing we can do about that. We can't, neither Fred nor I nor anybody else working in this industry. And BMW tried it, Volkswagen tried it, Mercedes to a certain extent tried it, saying it's not electric. I mean, if you want to solve the problem with the climate, get us down to where we can, we don't have to build new infrastructure. We've got the infrastructure. We can reduce our carbon footprint. We can reduce emissions. We can do all of this great stuff. But VW, unfortunately, really messed up. And that was the spark that lit the flame that it became what it is today. So here we are, giving rich people lots of money to buy electric cars.
And by that is Dieselgate, and by cheating, by adopting and embracing this sustainability when in fact they were faking it.
Yeah,
and
they didn't have
it's
to
something that all of us need to stop in all of these directions, because boy, those things just ruin everything. And go ahead, keep going, Michael.
Well, the thing is that we are at a point right now where no one is able to stand up and say, look, stop this. We can't do it. We haven't been able to do it in Europe. We haven't been able to do it in the United States, even though there are plenty of people who believe that we shouldn't be doing what we're doing, but promoting electric cars. It's expensive to build a completely new infrastructure to do everything that we're doing right now. We could get there in a better way, but right now, everybody's buying electric cars.
And in fact,
they're not buying electric cars. All the car companies are continuing to build enough electric cars to keep their name on the people's top head, so they keep buying their stock. But they have to continue to produce non-electric cars because that's what people continue to buy. I mean, even though you think everybody's buying electric cars, they're not. I mean, the vast majority of cars that are being bought all over the world are not electric cars. But Volvo and Mercedes and all of the other companies are saying by 2025 or 2035 or 2040, we're going to stop building electric cars. There's an awful lot that can happen between now and then, but they're building electric cars. And if from the standpoint of almost every standpoint except safety, I think I've said this before. I wouldn't buy an electric car, and I don't want to drive an electric car because I don't trust the batteries. I mean, they're dangerous. But people are buying them and they're happy with them and they think they're great. And I mean, I get messages all the time from folks who say, I know you're critical of electric cars, but I love my electric car, and I don't mind, taking a 2-hour break when I'm driving down to my friend's house. It's okay. And I save a lot of money, even though they don't save a lot of money because they don't really know how much money it's costing them. But that's where we are today, electric cars.
Or it's not only costing them, costing somebody else. And of course, the question is the electricity you're using. Could something else that's using electricity that is now really using electricity that is burning coal to get that electricity, could they be using that electricity and therefore not burn as much coal? I mean, if you really want to get down and discuss those things, that we are constrained by the amount of electricity that can be produced, not only by renewable sources, which we're trying to increase and so on as much as we can, but by whatever sources. So if all of a sudden you have now a new demand on that electricity by something else that was using something that was, well, it wasn't as good as the best of the electricity, it certainly is better than the worst of the electricity. So that's not taken into account. The issue batteries, we made a lot of progress on batteries. Batteries have always been the limiting factor. Their batteries are really tough. A lot of, Edison, everybody worked on batteries. Everybody wanted to do batteries because they almost look like the perpetual motion machine almost,
Sure.
I mean, there's whatever, when you break, you charge them back up. When you, there's just so many wonderful things about it. But batteries have a lot of excess baggage on them, and the fire one is one of them, and so on, and needs to be worked on, and we've got work to do. So, it's not a done deal. And I think what Fred points out, what you point out, what I try to point out. Look, let's take a little deep breath. Maybe an electric motor really is. I mean, when you think about electric motor, that it doesn't require a transmission, I mean, that is a fundamentally good thing about it. Okay, that's really helps. Otherwise, the current way we do this, we have to figure out based on RPMs and wheel turnings, where in the heck we are on these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that is an enormous savings. But, it comes with some baggage, and we have to look at the baggage. And I agree with you. We're not quite there yet. And of course, it brings us to the Tesla issue. The Tesla issue is out there because it's been sort of this wonderful emergence created by making a lot of, and looking backwards, excellent decisions by Elon. Who would have thought that, you really, if you do put together a charging network, if you do go after the people that already have a bunch of cars, so that the limitations and the range anxiety isn't there, because my goodness, if you really want to go far, you'll use your other cars in your stable. And this is in a sense a toy, and you start with that, and you do all, and you get the press to give you all the free ink you want to continue to promote the product. And you work hard, and you do work hard, and you do make it happen, and you bring a lot of very bright people together in a sense. But it's taken how many right decisions together to get to this point. And anybody else trying to compete with them at some point, they're not going to make all those same right decisions, and they're going to trip up. And I think, you pointed out a couple of them, and, in what you just said earlier.
Well, if the authorities hadn't been cowed by Musk, and I think that's his principal advantage in this.
That was a good call by him. I mean,
many calls.
Yeah, many calls.
What he's done is essentially said, "You're not smart enough to argue with me. I know what I'm doing, you don't. So even though you think that I'm not doing something that's safe, trust me. And even if you don't trust me, you'll have to believe me because I'm smarter than you are." I mean, he's basically used that ruse from the get-go.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't invent anything that goes into Tesla. Yeah. Everything was done there before, or has been used. I mean, looking at a Tesla with the top hat off, it looks like a Volkswagen. Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Basically that's all it is. He had his contribution was the concept of the business model. And he put everybody else in business because he gave away the patents on the skateboard and let everybody say, think about that that's the business, but that's not the business model. That's not the business he's in. It's not building skateboards.
Yeah.
In fact, he's now started to look at a unibody design because he's understood that that silly design he's got now isn't going to, people are not going to continue to be fooled by that concept.
And also, it was his skateboard and his company, and he controlled it. Okay, it wasn't somebody else's skateboard that he bought sort of on the side, and he went in there. I mean, I don't know. Somebody should start looking. Maybe you have to compare him to Henry Ford. Henry put everything together to be able to build the car. It wasn't just the assembly line. He fully integrated. And if you look at Tesla, it's fully integrated. And now, if you look at the whole AI thing, and so on, and I was blown away by his AI day. I just think that what he's done in that thing is I've said he's building the pans and the shovels for the gold rush. Now, my goodness, if he's also going to build the pans and the shovels to do this. And he's out there also prospecting and building out. My goodness, whoa! It's now no longer a car company. It now becomes who knows. So in a sense, he can now address all kinds of things. I mean, you start getting exaflops of computing. 10 to the 18th floating point instructions per second.
Look, if the thing that I have to come back to this.
Yeah. Okay. We will come back to it. I've lured you in.
We now have a regulation. It's UN Regulation 157 for automatic lane keeping systems. Mm-hmm. If that were enforced in the United States, it's not. It hasn't been adopted yet for the United States. It's been accepted in countries where there is type approval. Mm-hmm. But if that were adopted in the United States, he wouldn't be able to sell a single autopilot. He wouldn't be able to sell a car that had anything that had autopilot or full driving, whatever it's called, because it would fail. Those cars that are out there don't pass muster when it comes to doing what they should doing. And then there's the other article which I urge people to read is the article about handing over control from the robot. And Tesla is the worst. They haven't even had anything like Cadillac or GM has had, with being able to monitor what the person is doing to be able to take back control. In the next month's issue, I'm going to talk about Tesla getting to the fork in the road, and Yogi Berra said his advice to anybody, when you get to the fork in the road, take it. Well, the car didn't take any advice. It just went straight into a boulder.
Okay.
Five cars did this. Five different Teslas, all at the same fork.
Yeah. Well, look. But come on. I guess you've the couple of things there. To me, the one thing that the ace that he has up his sleeve, what I would call it, ace up the sleeve, is over-the-air updating. Okay, so in a sense, what I think he's been selling is he's been selling the thing that he doesn't have working well yet, but that thing can accept software. It's configurable, and he can reconfigure that sucker, bam. And that ability to reconfigure, once he gets to the point that it can pass, he can then, everything that's out there, quote unquote, everything that's out there, he can now bring to pass, which is a fundamental problem that the auto industry has had up to this point in time. Whatever you took out of the dealership, you were stuck with. Oh yeah, I mean, they did a recall and they replaced a switch or something like that, whatever, and holy hell, I mean, infinite expense, right, to fix it. He can fix it just like we do with our phones. I mean, this thing's been wanting to re-update itself last 3 nights and I haven't let it, but it's there. I
Why
mean,
haven't you let it?
Because it isn't power. I didn't plug it in.
Okay. Well, listen.
I mean, and
I've
maybe
updated this sucker twice.
Yeah.
And both times it screwed up mightily things that were already there.
Okay.
You and I know. Every time I update my computer with something, I have to figure out a way of getting it not to print to OneNote and to print to the printer, because for some reason it decides to do something. We know that there are problems with over-the-air updating, and I agree with you.
Nothing's perfect. I agree.
Yeah, nothing's perfect, especially Tesla.
The press Tesla has gotten, and when you talk to owners, they seem to be pretty happy about the concept and the way it's. They
if
say,
you paid
I go out to my car. I go out to my car in the morning and it's updated.
If someone were able to get $100,000 out of you to buy a car, which is, if you look at that car compared to a well-designed car, and you're riding in a well-designed car, if you spend $100,000 to buy that thing, or even $80,000, are you going to say, "Boy, was I stupid? That was so dumb. This car is a piece of crap"? No, you're not. I'm really happy with this. Yeah, it has a few problems, but I'm not. Do I look like a dummy?
That's the brilliance of the whole thing.
Why would I have bought that car if it was going to be a bad car?
They are facing a lawsuit from an attorney who purchased a car and paid $6,000 for full self-driving.
Yeah,
it's a lot more expensive now.
Wait,
couple years later, he asked for his money back.
Wait. An attorney. Come on, an attorney doesn't read fine print. Are you joking?
He's suing now.
Holy mackerel! Come on, this is such a setup. It's unbelievable. I can't believe the New York Times put that in there. Come on, Neil. You can't put. Whatever. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Can't make this stuff up.
Well, but look, I would think that if Elon offered to, hey, you want your money back? Here's your money back. Nobody, 10% of the customers will want their money back. For the reasons you just said.
He doesn't do it. He's
I
had
don't
plenty
know
of
why he
opportunities.
doesn't. Well, the reason he doesn't do it is he's getting so much free press out of this. He's getting so many eyeballs. He's getting so much free ink. Why not keep the discussion going? He's laughing all the way to the bank.
Sure.
Okay. And I think he knows what he's doing. And even now, the things that are coming out now, he's saying, full self-driving really isn't any good and all that stuff. And hey, he could turn it around instantaneously. And if they come down and say, hey, you have to turn it off, turn it off. You can't turn it on until fine, whatever. I don't know. I think he's in good position.
Oh yeah, I agree. He's going to be in a really good position when he finally gets to Mars, I think.
I'm going with him too. Damn it, I'm not going to live that long. I'm sorry. Boom.
On that note, we'll be back with more. But first, this is a good time to remind you about our sponsor, the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. To get more info, head to motoetf.com. On the website, look for a white paper. It's called The Smart Transportation Revolution. You'll find it under the Insights and News tab. There's information there to help you make informed decisions about investing. You may know that ETFs can be a smart way to spread risk with investments, focus on a particular category of stocks. The website again is motoetf.com. We're back with more of the Smart Driving Cars podcast and our guest, Michael Senna, publisher of The Dispatcher. Michael, in the latest edition, you write about Socrates 2.0. Tell us, for those of us on this side of the pond, what the project is all about and the significance.
Well, the project started, it was supposed to be a 3-year project, but then they got caught in the COVID. The idea was to develop a pan-European approach to how public authorities and private businesses could work together to improve traffic conditions, everything related to road usage, safety, sustainability, etc. The the project Socrates was a project in the late 1980s, early 1990s, and when I came to work at Volvo in 1992, we were sort of at the tail end of the Socrates project, and back then the whole idea of automation and how the coming navigation systems would be able to work and how traffic information would be able to improve the flow of traffic was something that was very important. And now they've taken this as Socrates 2.0 and extended that with the knowledge and experience that we've had during these last 20 years, almost 30 years. They asked me, the group asked me to be an advisor, not a technical advisor, but more of a strategic advisor, to look at what they were developing and to provide comments. I did this with the first, the first drafts of the report that came out. We had a meeting, it was 2 years ago, had a meeting in which I said, I think everything you're doing is terrific. The concept that you have of testing this in 4 different areas, 4 different cities is great. You'll be able to hopefully get good feedback. But I think you're sort of missing a little piece here, and the piece is that it doesn't seem that you're working very closely with the car companies. You've got BMW is on your team, but the car companies are bigger than BMW, and it would seem to me that if you're going to be working with traffic information starts with the car. It doesn't start with the road authorities, and it certainly doesn't start with the folks who are putting databases together. It starts in the car. And if you don't have the information that's coming out of the car, you need to think about how you're going to do that. And I also said that there are different ways of approaching this problem, and it's not just one size fits all. Not only are there different cities, different sizes of cities, Gothenburg's a lot smaller, maybe half the size of Stockholm, and there are different problems in both of these. And it has a lot to do with not only the form of the city, but the size of the city and how things work. And Sweden is different from France, and definitely different from Italy. So taking all of these things into account. And I gave an example of how there were differences in the way that you work. And in our meeting, I said, there's one is that you kind of wave and say, hi, hi, I'm over here, you're over there. How are you doing? Everything's fine. Can I help you out? The second is you come over to the person and you say, I'm here right now. I can help you. And you're shaking hands with that person. So you're getting a bit closer. And the next one is that the pre-COVID times, you give everybody a big hug and you're working almost, your buddies, and you're working in the same place. They took this concept, very simple, that I use as an example, and they ran with it. And they developed from that point, they developed a way of sharing data, creating data that's a community, and then coordinating the work of the groups who are working together. So at the farthest end, everybody is working together. They've got a base. They've got the same database. They're sharing information. They're working on delivering data together to the vehicles, to the pedestrians, and everything. At the other end, they're simply sharing information. I have this information. I'm going to share it with you. You do whatever you want with it. And I look at this project and how they've, over these 4 years that they've worked on it. For me, this is the most significant piece of work that's been done within the framework of the European Commission funding projects, or even of the country's funding projects. They've taken this from beginning to end, and what they've come up with is really, really useful. Next step is hopefully to do what they couldn't do during the COVID days, which is to get more into the cities, to do more of testing, and hopefully get more of the car companies involved. So it's a fantastic piece of work, and I hope everybody will read about it and then look for more information on it, because I think they've done a great job.
And for drivers, will they be seeing a difference soon, or when is it implemented, or?
No, it's not. It's not implemented. Well, like most of these projects, they go through a period where there's a concept, there's an idea, there's a proof of concept, and then each one. This isn't going to end up with there's a single body that's doing all this, and that's, again, this is the approach that they're taking. It doesn't have to be one solution. It's different types of solutions, appropriate solutions based on this. So hopefully the next step is that the car companies and the public authorities, and I know at least one of them, it's the Swedish authority, who's going to be working with this concept and trying to develop solutions that are based on the approach. It's an approach. It's how to look at this problem and then how to take it from there. Will the individuals in a car see a result of this within the next year? No. Within the next 5 years? Hopefully, yes.
Alan, in the latest Smart Driving Cars newsletter, you start out with an apology for suggesting that Plus.ai was totally irresponsible for testing without a driver.
Yeah, I have to apologize because they're not totally irresponsible. I guess they're just irresponsible, I guess. Because in fact, my totally irresponsibility was to go out there and do testing without a driver on public streets where you, Fred, and Michael, we might be out there and endangering us. So they didn't do that. They didn't even do that in China. I'm not to suggest that it's a better thing to do in China than in Sweden or the US. It's not. I mean, when one's doing testing, one should also have some safety backstops to be able, in case something happens, in case, as I like to say, Mother Nature throws you a spitter, and the thing's bound to curving all over the place, and you don't hit it. So you really, there's no reason to do testing without an attendant. Okay, a person sitting there waiting, ready to take over, you can still run your test.
Well, I guess it turns out this wasn't a public road that they were testing on.
So what they did is they apparently did it without anybody on board. I guess, at least that's what they tell us. But I guess we can't believe much of what they tell us, because it turns out that they did this on an expressway that had yet to open. So of course we couldn't have been out there. The public wasn't out there, so it's not really what they said, on a traffic-filled whatever, or implied, or more than implied, said. This stuff, when it works, it has to work in reality. It can't work in imaginary or in some sort of confines that aren't where, in fact, you're generating your revenue if you're going to run a business doing it. So I mean, so that they're still irresponsible, and so they did this. So why didn't they tell us they did this? Okay, and that if in fact the darn thing did run without anybody intervening and the attendant didn't need to be there, well, just tell us, and then we'll say, hey, I guess it worked. But you should still have the attendant in there in the first place. But apparently they did. Now they had a couple of chase vehicles. Now maybe some people in the chase vehicles, were seeing what was inside and what was happening, and they had the red button ready to hit it. When the DARPA challenge was going, DARPA officials were out there with kill switches. You had to put in your vehicle a communication system such that somebody could kill it if the thing went nuts. Of course, ours went nuts after 9.8 miles, and they killed it appropriately. Okay, one line of code, we would have been there, but we didn't do the garbage collection, so we were watching 250,000 obstacles that we had seen up to now, still tracking them. Of course, we ran out of memory. Okay, fine. Well, that's what you do tests for. To know what you don't know, to learn what you don't know, to fix it, to be able to do it. And so to be out there, and so you then begin to wonder, and then they show you this wonderful video, and you start looking at it, and you start looking at some shadows that are in the video, and you kind of say to yourself, well, my goodness, over how long of a trip was this? Because on part of the trips, the darn thing is casting a big shadow. Another part of the trip, it's not casting much of a shadow. I don't know. If you're in China, do you move the sun around to be able to see how much shadow you're going to, who knows? And then you look at it and you say, geez, did you Photoshop cars in there to make it look like there was traffic and so on? And you go, yikes, can I believe any of this garbage? Okay, and come on, this is tough. We can't fake it. Because in the end, or I guess, I don't know, if you're building a company to flip it, okay, then fine. All you need is a story. If you're building a company that is at some point going to generate revenues and you're actually going to earn it, then you got to do it. And what's all this fake stuff going on? And so it's just driving me nuts. And there are a lot of people that are working darn hard to try to do this. And everybody's seeing it's darn hard, including Elon. And at least some people are out there, continuing to roll up their sleeves, trying to make it happen and trying to do it. But my goodness, we have to be honest about this. We can't have Dieselgates on these things. We can't have Fukushimas. We can't have Chernobyls. We can't have, 3 Mile Islands. Because if we do, then, it's going to go poof. And I guess here you're only hurting investors, and maybe they deserve to be hurt because, they're just investors. I don't know. I'm frustrated by the whole thing. But maybe we should get back to some more things on Michael's Dispatcher, because they're much more interesting than the stuff the other stuff that's going on. I mean, Michael,
he's leaving
42 is the answer, right, Michael? 42 is the answer, isn't it?
42 is the answer, yeah.
We go on that a little bit, Michael.
I said that the musings, the last article is usually something where I take some time to reflect, maybe a little bit of philosophizing or thinking beyond just cars and wheels and so on. This musing is intended to open the question to where we're going to live and where maybe we should be living, and puts out the idea that we've created these huge cities, and maybe there was a reason for the creation, and we know what that reason was, and that reason doesn't really exist to the same extent as it did 120 years ago or 140 years ago, when the Industrial Revolution needed to get as many people in one place to be able to have enough workers for the factories. And we discuss Paris and London and cities as being these cultural centers. They didn't start as cultural centers. They started because factories were there and places were needed. People were needed to work in these. I mean, New York City was 30,000 people at around 1776. It wasn't a cultural center. And 100 years later, the population had increased to, I don't know, 300,000 people, or, turn of the century, 1900s, it's 1 million people. I mean, the thing is that those people weren't there to go to vaudeville. They weren't there to see plays being put on and operas being played. They were there to work. And the same is true as in these large Chinese cities. There are more cities that are larger than New York in China than there are anywhere else. I mean, combined anywhere else in the world. So what we have also seen is that they're difficult to keep clean. They're difficult in terms of crime. They're difficult for a lot of reasons. They're also not the best places to be able to move around in and to be able to do what you need to do. And we've seen this during the period of COVID. Those who could left. They either they went to their parents' house, or they went to their summer house, or they left and they did things that they needed to do in different places, and they didn't need to be in the city. So the question is, should we be thinking about, the future of transportation, the future of humanity, the future of society in relation to cities that are 10, 30, 20, 30 million people? Do we need to have those? Or should we be looking at ways of going back to a period of time when towns and cities were being planned for 30, 50, 150, maybe 200,000, which is certainly enough to be able to have an opera and a theater and so on. And we've seen how we can do things that we didn't think we could do by not being in a large city. And what I use just to keep people reading is the series, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series that was written by Douglas Adams.
But may I interrupt here for a second?
Sure.
Because
Sure.
I want to pick up on what you just said, because
Yep.
you just turned upside down, some of the thoughts going into before COVID about smart cities. I mean, everybody was talking about, more Chinese like the Emirates like towers, and everybody crowded in. It was interesting to me to look at those things and saying all the architecture folks. You're educated in architecture. I'm not, but I'll throw some stones here. Showing these glass buildings going, and all these things that they build in New York, these little slender little thingies that must go boom, 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 boom. Does anybody? Never mind. As the way the Internet of Things, whatever. Anytime anybody showed any of those things, what would they show? They showed some sort of high speed thing where everybody's must be crushed in together to get anybody. And then there were always two white people on bicycles, with blonde hair outside, and that's all you saw. You never saw any people except for the two white people with the blonde hair. What was going on with the architecture, smart cities folks that saying that's where we're going? We're not going there anymore. You're suggesting, Michael, what are you doing?
I never went there. I mean, I've lived. I spent a lot of time when I grew up. Brooklyn was the sort of the second place. That's where the majority of my father's family was. So we were in New York and we're in Brooklyn. And then when I was 7 years, I was in Princeton. I was in New York a lot because of my first cousin, same age, went to Columbia. So I was there, at least once a month, and I'd stay there. And for those 7 years, I spent a lot of time in New York. And when I graduated, I went to London. I lived in London for 4 years. I mean, so cities, I've spent a lot of time in cities, and big cities, not just little cities, but big cities. And then I lived in Stockholm for a period of time. I don't live in a city. And I grew up in the middle of a city of 125,000 people at the time. It's now about 80,000 people. And I thought that size of a city was just fine. There wasn't anything that I needed that I couldn't have had, even today at 80,000, but it was built for 140,000. But still, I can get everything I need. And if I really need something more, then I can go to place that's a little bit larger. But do I need to live in a city of 10 million, 50 million people, 30 million people? I've spent a lot of time in Shanghai. Would I live in Shanghai? Not on a bet. I mean, it's why? Because it's great restaurants and they're great bars and they're great, all of this stuff. No, I mean, people have different lives. People have, you have a life. You want to go fishing. You want to have a barbecue. You want to, meet your friends. Brooklyn is over 2 million people. It would be the fourth largest city in the United States if it was still a city. It's got a baseball team. It's got a I think it, no, it doesn't have a baseball team.
Yeah,
It's
used to have a baseball team.
used to be my
Basketball.
favorite team when I was growing up. Yeah, Ebbets Field, but they've
Yeah.
got a really good basketball team. Um, it's 2 million people. It's probably too big. Then it's probably got too many people. Too many hipsters have moved in. Um, but 10 million, 20 million, 30 million. I mean, do we really need this kind of stuff? We've got a lot of land. We could do a lot more with what it is that we have, and we could certainly have a lot better lives. And we wouldn't have to be worrying about the kinds of things that we are worrying about today, like hyperloops, getting from New York to Chicago. Who needs to go there? I don't need to go there every day. I need to get from where I'm living to where I'm working. And if that trip is more than 50 kilometers or 40 kilometers, it's too long. So that's what I've put out there. That what I'm saying is smart cities. Cities for me, cities, it's the people who are living in cities who are either smart or they're not so smart. And we have good cities that are well maintained and well managed. We have other cities that aren't. So whether people are smart or not smart doesn't really matter. But the cities themselves, no.
Yeah, I've for some time also been sort of on that really we need maybe smart villages or whatever, but that's only because I've lived in the Princeton bubble for now
One of
50
the
plus
fastest
years.
one of the fastest growing cities
And
in New Jersey, I think, Alan.
anyway, so what the hell do I know? So I can't say any of that, but it's always so go back. So now, sorry to interrupt, but really,
No,
to me, I agree. I just don't understand. I've said this in my classes. I just don't understand why the Chinese have taken basically half their population and stuck them in towers. Now maybe we could, that's justifiable because we need them as workers to produce and make the stuff that we need, but in fact, there are economies of scale when you could do that kind of thing, but why does Goldman Sachs bring everybody into lower Manhattan to do what? Trade on a screen? Why do they do that?
Did you say gold mine? Did you say Goldman Sachs?
No, I meant what's their name? Gold mine. I did say gold mine. One of my students, one of my seniors, she was an intern she told me, just was on Zoom with her. She was an intern at Gold Mine this summer. They had them in there. They had all the interns. Everybody in there was all crowded. What the hell? Really? I don't know. I guess. I guess if you're going to work an intern 14 hours a day, Xeroxing, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, but you can't, as I said in one of the previous dispatchers, you can't build a car remotely.
Right.
Right. You can't design it. Right. You can't test it. You
can't dig a ditch remotely. So they're the real
That's
people
right.
who do real work have to go to where the work is.
Exactly.
Some of us can sit there, in here and just do and zoom it out. But go ahead. Yeah.
But we've had in Sweden, we've had two quite large vehicle manufacturers, one Volvo cars and the other Volvo trucks, in a city that says the city itself of a couple of 100,000 and the region about half a million people. We don't need a city of 30 million people to support companies that do what they do, particularly not today with the amount of robots that are being used in the production of these vehicles. China has done what they've done, pulled people out of their farms, put them in cities so they could be the factory of the world. And that's what they do. You go there and you see everybody's working, and what you don't see is in sort of the edges where Volvo has their facilities, in the edges where the factories are. Middle of Shanghai, you don't see many factories, although they're there as well, mostly hidden behind the walls. But if you get a little bit further out from the center of Shanghai, you see all of these people working in factories, and they need those number of people to produce all those hats that we buy, those baseball hats that you buy for your team coming from China, and I tried to buy a set of earphones for the Bluetooth earphones. Don't even think about buying something that wasn't produced in China. So if everything is being produced there, they need everybody to work in the cities. This is where we were in 1900 in the United States. And this is why New York became what it did, and why Detroit became what it did, and why all of these other cities became what they did. And now you look at Detroit, okay, Detroit doesn't need 2.5 million people to work in those factories anymore. And that's why it doesn't have 2.5 million people anymore. It's got, I don't know, 700,000 people in what was a 2.5 million size town. And the same is true with Scranton. All those half of the people weren't working in the mines, but they were working in factories. My father worked in the Scranton Lace Works. Scranton Lace Works has been empty for the last 50 years. We don't make lace that way anymore. But there were factories that were in these towns. Trenton had factories, I think, as well.
Absolutely.
At some point. Those factories don't exist anymore. First they moved to South, then they moved to Mexico, and then eventually they moved to China.
The motto of Trenton was Trenton makes, the world takes.
That's right.
I mean, of course.
I think it's still on the bridge there.
Whatever,
it's still on the bridge. Yeah.
It's still on the bridge.
You started to mention Douglas Adams.
Yes.
And we don't want to wrap up without you finishing that thought.
Absolutely.
Well, I listened to the Douglas Adams, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. when it started, it was a BBC radio program, and I was living in Cambridge, and we had WGBH, the National Public Radio, which had recently started in the United States. And I just got hooked on the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. There were 2 books that he eventually wrote. Douglas Adams, who produced and wrote these series, and then he wrote 3 more books in the series. If you haven't read the books, I really suggest that you do. If you don't have to be a geek. Maybe I'm a geek, but you don't have to be a geek to read these books and enjoy them. My wife is not a geek, and she listened to them on the tapes, and she thought they were absolutely fantastic. So normal people with at least a brief, sense of humor can listen to these and get a lot out of them. There's so much, particularly for anyone who's in the business of travel and transport, because Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is really exactly what it says. You're going to move all over the galaxy and beyond that to the universe in all kinds of different vehicles. But eventually you're always going to come back to the same place, the place where you call home, wherever that is, at whatever end of the galaxy, whether it's Ford Prefect in Betelgeuse or Arthur Dent in Islington, or his little town and where he's gotten out of the city and is trying to live his life before the Vogons want to put a bypass through it. I really suggest it's worth spending some time reading them. Highly humorous, lots of information that comes out.
That's why we love having you with us, Mike. Thank you. One last story, Alan. Waymo has begun offering free rides in its autonomous cars in San Francisco. It's an all-electric Jaguar with safety drivers, of course, on board. This is new there, but they're carrying passengers for the first time in their testing in the city.
Yeah, I think it's great that they're doing that, and of course, what I want them to do, or somebody to do, is come to a real place that really has people that need mobility, and to come to Trenton to do it, and the Trentons of this world. Again, if they're doing it in the places of San Francisco where, in fact, the auto ownership is low, and you don't have great Muni service and BART service, then fantastic. Then, in fact, you're out there providing a real improvement in the mobility opportunities so that you can travel through the universe and hitchhike through the universe much more easily and better. And hopefully out of that, the only reason you do it is to improve your life. So you're improving your life almost by definition. I mean, if going someplace doesn't improve your life, guess what? You shouldn't be going, and you probably aren't going. Okay. I mean, the only reason we go any place is to improve our lives. Otherwise, why would we incur the burden? I mean, fundamental economics. Everybody's brain, I think, works that way, and so on. But again, as we've discussed, Chandler is a great place to test because it's, let's say, easy. Maybe the operational design domain is easy. The problem is the competition is out there with everybody has more cars than they know what to do with. So bring something else. It's going to be looked at as a Disneyland ride. Great, I'll take one, but whatever.
And this is going to be the focus of the next, for instance, Smart Driving Cars
Well,
Summit.
yeah, the idea is that, my goodness, maybe these manufacturers should come someplace where, in fact, the provision of the mobility that they're really trying to provide, apparently the value proposition of what Waymo is trying to do, which is driverless mobility. And let's move from the technology. What is it? What's the value proposition? The value proposition to me must be affordable, high quality, or let's start with high quality, affordable, equitable, sustainable mobility for all. I mean, to me, that's what the package is. So if that's the package, where is that? What marketplace is most likely to benefit from it? Well, let's go someplace where the mobility isn't also good for folks, and let's provide it there. And I'll argue that those places are, all you need to do is go to the census data and ask what look up where the household car ownership values are. If the households have 2 or more cars, 70% of the households in Chandler have 2 or more cars. My goodness. There are still the 30% with 1 or fewer. Out of the 1 or fewer, how many are the ones are one-person households? Never mind, we won't go to the details of the decimal points here, but I'm only looking at 30% of the market. Whereas in a Trenton, where 30% of 70% of the population has 1 or fewer cars, I have 70% of the population that I can go out there and provide mobility for. And so let me look there to be able to do it. And that's sort of the focus that we had with the last summit. And I guess to me, the technology has evolved enough that we really need to now make a push to have these technology companies come to a place where good mobility isn't available, and try it there and do it there, and to sort of encourage them to do that. What I've argued is that we have to basically build a field of dreams, not only have the demand, the problem to solve, but also the welcoming that has to come to allow a solution to possibly emerge. And the welcoming is really important. And the welcoming is not only from the top of the decision pyramid, but also from the bottom. So I think that in New Jersey, we are finally having, the top of the pyramids, including the departments of transportation and political offices, top and bottom, as well as the community saying, my goodness, we would like you to come. We're going to make it easy for you to come. It's so easy for one of these communities to say, when somebody from the outside comes in, basically, I don't think so. or you have to go over these hurdles. And of course, nobody from the outside will come in and try anything. But I think here we finally have an opportunity in Trenton, in Central Jersey, in New Jersey, to have a welcoming environment. So these technologists who aren't using smoke and mirrors, or who aren't lying, cheating, and stealing, to come in and actually, see if they can deliver on what they're supposed to be delivering, is, of course, safe, high quality, affordable, equitable, sustainable mobility for all. So if you can do that, come to the summit, come tell us about it. We're going to do the 5th Smart Driving Car Summit on November 2nd through the 5th, and we're going to do it and see if some folks really show up. I think we'll have the welcoming entourage there to welcome everybody who would like to think that they can do that. And we would like you to come in here and see what you can actually do, as opposed to telling us about what you think you can do. And please don't bring the smoke and mirrors. Don't.
Not allowed.
Not
and the
allowed.
place to go
No,
keep an eye out at smartdrivingcar.com for info as it evolves and we get closer. But this is really going to happen. Very exciting.
I mean, we really want to do it, and this is to finally do it. And we want to see if we can make that happen. Michael, what do you think?
I think it's great. I think we had our 4 months of, or almost 5 months of Smart Driving Car in starting in December of last year and carrying through to April of this year. Alan, you and I have agreed that we're going to try to put this in, document this, and also to sort of put all of the information together that in one place where we can explain why we're doing this and what we expect to be the outcome in a book, which we've been working on. So getting the people together as soon as possible, just to get them thinking about how this can move forward, how we can do a real proof of concept, how we can get the people who are needed to provide the tools. That's essential, because we can't do this without having something that we can actually work with. We can't mock up a driverless car and test the whole concept of providing mobility for the non-mobile. So I think getting them together and putting this in front of them, and also getting them to understand that there is this whole other idea that Waymo, you may have a business model for doing something in Chandler and it may work for you, and taking that to San Francisco because you have an idea that you as a company are going to be able to earn money doing this some way. You're going to have to think about this in a different way, maybe not the same business model working in a Trenton or a Scranton or other cities or a Syracuse, where you're going to be providing mobility for people who don't have the possibility of paying, or who don't have the same idea that being in a vehicle is freeing them up to be able to search and buy things online. I mean, it's a completely different approach to business. So I think getting that point across as quickly as possible, I think, is good. Really good.
Yeah, and we hope that you find a business model out of this that allows you to earn and become rich too. I mean, people do spend money to travel, and they have forever, always. Mm-hmm. And so there is the opportunity to earn something. And there is the opportunity to earn a profit. And what's key here is that the revenue be greater than the cost. And what I think that what I continue to think is that the technology piece allows you to take what would have been a high cost thing and drop it down here, so that if this is really the level at which people can pay, that instead of losing and needing the subsidy or whatever, or only serving those up here, you can actually bring it here. And this margin is a good margin. and the scale isn't bad.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Most unfortunately in the country, 30%, 40% of the people aren't all that wealthy. There are a number of them. Okay, so it's not to say, oh my goodness, I don't have a market. All right. And the problem is, if you just go after the 1%ers, I mean, they're just a pain in the butt. Okay. Just think what you have to put up with. You might get a nickel out of them.
I don't know any 1%ers.
I don't either. So I'm not there, but I imagine. Maybe I do. Some of my students, never mind.
No.
Well, Michael, thank you again for taking the time with us. Really
My
terrific.
pleasure.
People can find you and the Dispatcher at michaellsena.com. Thank you also to our sponsor, the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF. The ticker symbol for the ETF is MOTO. More info is available at motoetf.com. You can find us at smartdrivingcar.com, also on Anchor FM, Spotify, TuneIn, Apple, Google, Spreaker, SoundCloud, wherever you get podcasts. And you can get your smart speaker to play us too. You can find my tech reports at techstination.com. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Alan Kornhauser. Thank you for listening or watching, and please continue to stay safe.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy.
Yeah.